Cool. I should probably say thank you for coming. I appreciate everyone coming. Today's session is going to be on connecting NotebookLM to gems and using gems and why you would use gems, and then automating an output for you using Google Workspace Studio flows. If you haven't seen them before, they let you automate things when something happens. And I just wanted to create a quick visual. You'll notice that this is obviously not necessarily entirely algo marketing branding. We have a new logo, which actually I quite like, in the bottom left with an A and an M. But this, I just wanted to represent the three areas that we're looking at, and when you may wish to use one of these tools for something that you plan to do in the future. So is anyone, I realize people are in the waiting room. Am I the only person that can let these people in? Do we know? Or actually, all these are note takers.
Luke, I'm watching, so I'll let them in.
Cool. Thank you. We've got NotebookLM, and NotebookLM, you've probably used it. If you haven't already, then you're missing out on a really, really, really good knowledge management tool. And in this example that we're going to do, I'm going to show you two examples today. This is going to be semi hands-on. Feel free to follow along if you wish to, but I won't necessarily wait for you to finish anything and put hands up and all that kind of stuff. It's just going to be I'm walking through the tools. We'll build it together on my screen. You're welcome to follow along at home if you can. NotebookLM is your data aggregator. It collects all your data together. And then you can ask questions on that data. You can use NotebookLM as like an FAQ for you. It's basically your first port of call when you need to leverage some of the data that's within there. And one of the benefits of NotebookLM, collecting all this data together for you, rather than going to Gemini and asking Gemini to find this information for you, is that the information that you have in NotebookLM is grounded on itself. So what do I mean by that? The information that's coming out of your NotebookLM chats is only related to the information that's inside the documents. Whereas if you go to Gemini and you say, give me the latest metrics on X, Y, and Z, it's just going to pull whatever documents it can find. And obviously then you're reliant on the information that Gemini is coming back as reputable for you. NotebookLM is also an amazing source for looking at internal data. And I'll show you how you can do that in NotebookLM as well during this session. Then you've got gems. And I think a lot of people still are wondering how they use gems or when they should use gems, what really good for. And for me, gems are really good for formatting and analyzing in a specific way the data or the information that you have. They are really good as gatekeepers, so something that will stop something from being sent to someone, or stop an AI being able to say something in a certain way. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how we'll use those in this session today as well. As really good tools for maintaining your brand voice or your governance, and also really good analysts, so analyzing things in the ways in which you wish for them to be analyzed. So that could be data, or it could be information. Then we've got our automate step. This is our Google Workspace flows step. And this is listening for changes taking place, and then it's taking actions on those changes. And this is something generally that's always on, listening in the background, waiting to change, and then doing things on your behalf. And in today's session, we're going to deliver some insights, and those insights are going to be in a document, but also they'll be in an email to a team. And one of these workflows we're going to build out together. You have to forgive me because I'll probably need to delete some of the steps I have in there that will remind me how to build this on the fly with everyone watching. But the second one, we're just going to look at what I did and step through the stages, and we'll talk through why I did it in that way, just because I don't think we'll necessarily have time for me to go through all of it. So we're going to start with NotebookLM. In NotebookLM, I've already created a notebook, and this is purely because it takes a while for the research to come back. But if you haven't created notebooks in NotebookLM before, they're extremely simple to create. If you're on a paid-for plan, you have 300 notebooks with 300 sources. Sources are the files or the links or the references that you have in this left-hand panel here. And a notebook LM, generally when you spin one up, so when you create a new notebook, will ask you if you want to collect sources from the web, which is what I've done for my example, or if you want to upload some of your own files, or maybe even use your own Drive, Google Drive files. And that's another option in this drop down here for finding sources for your content. So if you wanted to use internal data only, you could switch this to Drive, and then you could ask it to search through your Drive for certain types of content. And if you're in a big enough business where you've got lots of rich content, that can be really, really valuable to you as well here. I'm going to start with the notebook that I've already created. So where's it gone now? It's the State of Event Marketing 2026. And what I asked it to do, which is find me resources, reports, state of MarTech and state of event marketing reports from different businesses all across the web about what people are doing in this age with how AI is impacting their events, how they're reporting on their events, like what is the frameworks that people are working to at the moment. So just generally like good research-based topics that companies are putting out onto the web to show obviously that they're thought leaders. I did this with the deep research tool, and I imported all of those into here just with the click of a button. I now have some 30 odd reports, which I can now use as a frequently asked question. So like if I'm an event researcher and I want to understand what is happening, what people are doing in the market at the moment, if I scroll up here, I think I've already asked that question. So what are the core themes of event marketing in 2026? What are the new things that event marketing teams are doing? We can see that we're moving from big flagship events to many more micro style events, so less than 250 people. And we can see that people are mostly coming now to events for networking as opposed to actually see the content that's on slides and learn from that kind of content, which is a shift from previous years. And that could be related to AI and AI writing content on behalf of others and everything becoming relatively standardized across the industry. I don't know if that's true, but this is my immediate thoughts from seeing this. I'm not an event marketer, by the way, so you're very welcome to say that this sounds like utter rubbish. However, this is like my FAQ. This is my quick, like, am I doing the right thing in my role? Now, if I wanted to make this a bit more useful, I may wish to include this in some kind of always on research topic. So one of the things I could do here is I could come in and I could ask the question like I did at the top. So give me some generalized themes. I could, if I wanted to, paste in, say, what my event brief is here into this box. I think I do have an event brief somewhere. Let's say it's here. And I could say, give me some advice on this, on how I should update this brief with the research. And if I hit go on that, if I hit go on that, my prompt is probably too large. I'd need to summarize that first, but imagine that I'd summarize that and I'd hit go. This would be trying to give me some insight into how I could amend my brief. This is like in this one view, not particularly useful here. And it's a manual process that you're having to do. So it's manual step process. What I want us to do in this session is build an automated process so that whenever a brief is created by me or my team, it will validate that brief against the research that we've collated in this NotebookLM instance. And it will give us that research back in the document that the brief was in as a new tab. And we'll do that together. This will probably take best part of 20 minutes to explain how this works. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention one or two new features that have come to NotebookLM while we're here recently that you may or may not have used. The first one's really, really, really useful, I find, is this label button here. If you have more than 5 sources, you can get Gemini to label your sources automatically for you. So by looking at the content, it'll add them to groups. I did this earlier, so obviously it's already done. But it's grouped all of these pieces of content into AI marketing insights, attendee experience ROI, event industry trends. And what the reason why this is useful is not only because now this is easier to navigate and I don't have all those random links down the side, but also I can just choose a specific section if I have a question to ask. So if it's about performance or experiences, I can just query the sources that are about experiences rather than looking across the entire set. And this will make my results a lot better, and it will give me better, well, I mean, it'll also be a lot faster to get my insights back. You can also, from this button as well, create your own labels and add your own categories, and then shift your sources into your own categories if you feel like you can do a better job than what the AI has done. And here you can also return to the list view if you so wish. You can rename these and you can add emojis to them too if you so wish, as you can see. The other one I just wanted to quickly mention as well was mind maps. You may or may not have used them. Previously, mind maps, you could only press the mind map button and it would create a generalized mind map for you. I saw a really decent Reddit post earlier on today that I'll try and share after this, which is around how someone is leveraging the fact that you can now change the prompts on mind maps. So you can now edit. I don't know why I can't generate anything. Here we go. You can now change the prompt on mind maps to be able to make them specific. And there's some really decent mind maps out there in the market around like how people do this to make better decisions. So decision-making mind maps. I think this one was like a threat analysis mind map that literally now enables me to step through the different sort of threats that people who are hosting events may have. So that's just one other thing that I quickly wanted to share before jumping more into the session. I see Ginter's got a question. Is there a way for Notebook to automatically upload/update files from a specific Google Drive folder as they're added? Specific folder, no. However, as of May 26th, which was very recently, your Drive files that you have in NotebookLM will now automatically sync. So if you can find a way of making it so that your Drive files, the individual files that you have already synced to NotebookLM, are updated instead of creating new ones, like new tabs, for example, in Word documents, then they will automatically sync and become, part of your knowledge base. Otherwise, I don't think that you can add a Drive folder as a whole. You can only add individual files. So that's a limitation at the moment. But yeah, your Drive files now automatically sync and stay up to date. Great question. Cool. So I've got my research now. I want to leverage this research. What I'm going to do, I've got an event brief here that I just created with Claude earlier, which is just purely a Google Doc file about launching a product. And the product is this thing that we're creating together here. So obviously everything's very meta. But you may have, this use case isn't specific to launching products. It's also not specific to event marketing. It's just, if you have a process that you do regularly and you feel like there are other people in the world that might do this process regularly, and maybe they're writing knowledge bases or articles or research on it, you may wish to validate the way that you're thinking is actually in line with the way that they're thinking, or maybe they're thinking a slightly different way, and then that could enrich the thing that you're going to create. So this example is about event marketing. It doesn't have to be. What I'm going to do, let me remove these and we'll build these together, is I'm going to build a simple workspace, a studio flow. So if you haven't been here before, this is Workspace Studio. You can get to it from studio.workspace.google.com. All Google accounts have access to this, assuming that they're a Workspace customer. You get 25 flows. So there were no limits on this before, but there are now. You get 25 flows that you can run a certain number of activities against. It's much like Zapier, if you've used Zapier before, or Make.com, that let you basically string things together, but this is highly integrated into the Google environment. I have more than 25 flows because I've built more than 25 things since the the limit was imposed. If you're on Ultra, maybe if you're working inside Google, you'll have a larger limit than that. But what this lets us do is it lets us string bits of workflow together. And I think today I'm going to be building one that enhances my brief with the research that we have in NotebookLM. So my first step is going to be one that triggers automatically. So when someone adds a document to a specific folder, I'm going to automatically trigger this workflow to happen, and it's going to enrich that document with the research that I have in my NotebookLM instance. And you'll see some of the limitations as we go through this. Like, what I'm not able to do is completely rewrite my document. What I'm not able to do is write individual lines somewhere within my document using this process, but I am able to add a new tab and add all my research on that tab, so it's all centralized in one place. So to do this, I'm going to add a new step. Let me remove this step just so we can see these triggers. These are the triggers that you get inside Workspace Studio. They will add more triggers over time. When this Studio tool first released, they had more triggers in here than they do now. They had to remove some for security reasons, but there should be more back in here in the future. But some of them are like when I receive an email, when I receive an email from a certain person or a certain inbox. That's very good for like automating draft creations or auto archiving certain emails that you may have. When I receive a chat message, when something changes in a Google Sheet. For me, I'm going to use when an item in a folder, when an item is added to a folder. And this means that when an item is added to this folder, this workflow is going to automatically run. I've got a folder that I've already created called webinar example. And now when I add a Google Doc to that folder, it's going to automatically run this process. The next step that I'm going to add is a Ask Gemini step. You might not know to do this because of some of the limitations in here, so hopefully you'll learn from this. What I can't do with one of these trigger steps, so these are like our steps that do things. These are our action steps, I should say, not trigger steps. These are the ones that do things on our behalf. What I can't do in here is read a Word document. At the moment, I can only create a document or add to a document. So this document that's just been added in step 1, I can't read that yet. The way to read it, though, is in an Ask Gemini step. That's the only way to do that at the moment. And what Gemini can do in this step, because it's got access to your Google Workspace that you can see here, is that can pull out the information from this step. What I know is that NotebookLM has a limit to the size of the prompt that I can add. So I'm just going to ask it to summarize the information in the document for me so that I can add it to my next step. Can you please extract the information from this document and summarize it for me so that I can prompt notebook. And then in here, I have this little variables button. So this is my prompt. Obviously, I could spend more time writing a richer prompt, but I probably won't need to for this example. In here, in this variables section, this is where we get access to any previous steps and the outputs from those previous steps. So our trigger step, you notice, is here. So step 1, when an item is added to this folder. That step gives me access to 4 different properties. So I have the link to the document, I have the name of the document, I have the folder that that document is in, and I have the name of that folder. I'm just going to put link to the item. And now Gemini, because it has access to my Google Workspace, and I've clicked this button here, that's now going to be able to read this document and summarize that for me. That's one of the workarounds that we have to build in Workspace Studio at the moment for extracting any information from Google Docs. If I wasn't sending this into NotebookLM, by the way, I could ask Gemini to extract the entire document for me, and then I can use that entire extract in my next activity. So I could push it into a different document, or I can move it into a spreadsheet or something along those lines. But because NotebookLM has got a limit, I think of 1,500 characters or so on the prompt that you can create, I'm having to ask it to summarize. So just to be clear, my next step is going to be this new step here. So this is the latest step that's been added to NotebookLM, and it's our Studio. It's our NotebookLM step. This lets me query any of my notebooks in NotebookLM, and I will query this state of event marketing 2026, and I'm going to give it a prompt. I have pre-written a prompt alongside Claude for this activity, but obviously I could just write in here, I want you to output for me the things I'm missing for this event that makes sense from the research in NotebookLM. I'm just going to grab this prompt and we can step over it quickly together. And to get this prompt, basically I was just asking Claude to write me a prompt about, what did I say? I've got a NotebookLM set up with research in it about event marketing in 2026. Please can you write me a prompt that uses this research to fill gaps in my event brief that we could possibly fill? And it created me this prompt, which is asking me to, I will provide the event overview. I will, this isn't it, this is my brief. I obviously didn't copy this. Apologies. Here we go. You're an experienced, so we've got the role here. You're an experienced event marketing strategist, and it's your job to run a gap analysis on my event. And then we basically talk about how it should work, what I want to receive back, and then quick wins. That is now going to query my NotebookLM with the with all that research in it. So in this step here, all of these are going to be queried when I run this. I know that, again, just to flag, in NotebookLM, when you're selecting these sources, you can obviously decide which ones get used in your responses. When you're querying sources from Workspace Studio, it will query all of those sources. So every source is going to be queried. So you may need to split your NotebookLM instance up, your notebooks up into subsets if you have specific information that you want to query. I then need to, what's missing from this is the actual brief. So let me just add the brief. And I'm going to add it again as a variable. And I'm going to add it as the response from my Gemini step. So if you remember, my step 2 Gemini step was to extract and summarize the information from my brief. That's going to go in there. So now I've got my prompt looking for gap analysis, and it's doing that gap analysis with research that I've gathered in my NotebookLM instance. And it's using the brief that has been uploaded into my Google Drive, or will be uploaded into my Google Drive. And then I want to output this information somewhere. And for me, because I know that it's going to be a Google Doc that gets uploaded into my Google Drive, I get to add to a document down here. So I could, if I wanted to add this to a spreadsheet, I could send myself the information in an email, and maybe that's how I like to action it. But for me, I'm going to add this to the same document that was uploaded in the first place. So there is a new tab. In the document area, in here, I can either look through my drive and I can pick a specific document, or I can add a variable to this step as well. And so this variable lets me choose the document that started this process. So this one here. Excuse me. I then get to decide where I want to put this information. So I can put it in the first tab. So if we go to a Google Doc, this is the first tab. If I had a second tab, that would be the second tab, etc. So I can add it to the first tab, or I can add it to a new tab. And I'm going to choose new tab in this instance. I'm then going to give it a name. So let's give this like research recommendations. Fingers crossed I've spelled that right. Maybe it's not 2 C's. Nobody judge me. And then I get to decide if it is before or after the content. And this should only run once for this document, it doesn't really matter, but you can obviously decide if it sits at the top or at the bottom. of the document. And then I need to choose the content to add. And here I'm just going to choose what NotebookLM has come back, what content has come back from NotebookLM for me. So we've got content created by NotebookLM, Notebook ID and the notebook link. I'll just add the content created by NotebookLM, and we'll get to see all this happen, by the way, in a minute if this is hard to follow. And then my last step is just going to be to send myself an email. Sorry, I went very quickly there. The email steps, you'll notice that only one of them actually does an action, notify someone. And at the moment with Workspace Studio, you can only notify yourself, or you can draft emails, but you physically have to go in and send them yourself. You can notify yourself in chat. You can add documents to your own Google Drive, but it's all very self-contained at the moment. When it launched, it was much more open. You could message anyone, but I think it was abused, so it was removed. So I'm going to notify myself by email. Your research is complete. And in the message, I'm just going to put a link to the Google Doc that started this process. So that I can click on that link and I can go straight to the Word document. And I know it's happened because it might not be me that's always uploading information to this folder. It might be someone in my team, and this research has taken place for me automatically. I'll hit save. So just to summarize what we've done there then, we have said when someone uploads a file, Google Doc, to our folder in Google Drive, we're automatically going to trigger this workflow. We're going to extract the content from that brief that's been provided to us. We're then going to ask NotebookLM to do a gap analysis for us on our event based on the research that we've collated on what good event marketing looks like in 2026. We're then going to get that research and put it back in the same document that started this workflow. And then we're going to send myself an email when that step is finished. I can, from Workspace Studio, test these things. I would just caveat. Testing is, in some platforms, when you run testing, it simulates everything and things don't actually happen. In Workspace Studio, things happen. So we're going to see in the document I've created that there is a new tab. We are going to see in my inbox that there is an email that gets sent. So bear in mind, when you're running these tests, actual data will be changed, or things that you do will have an impact on the workflow. Really, it's just so that you can see in a view what's taken place, as opposed to it just running autonomously in the background. So when I test, because this happens normally, this normally happens on when something happens, I'm just going to choose a file for this test. So in my drive, I can choose the brief that I've already shown, this event marketing brief, and I can hit start. What that'll do now is it's got the file and it said it was added to my drive. It's now extracting the content and summarizing the content with Gemini. It'll take a couple of minutes, not a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds. So here's my event brief, the information in the brief. It's now going to NotebookLM and it's querying the 33 sources that I have in there for gaps that we should be considering filling for our event. This one is generally the longer one. And then we should see in here in a minute a new tab be added once this NotebookLM step is completed. Also, it does add, Workspace Studio does add to your chat history in your NotebookLM instance as well. So we'll see the big prompt that I've added to my, well, you can see it here actually from a previous run that I did. It does add that in here too. Here we go. My NotebookLM has come back with this research, this summary, and then I've got my document link here and my email. We check the email. The email, obviously I could have written more, but the email gives me a link to my document. Inside the document, we'll see that we've got the brief. So this is what I provided, the summary of this I provided to the NotebookLM. And then we've got our recommendations. And in our recommendations, I don't know if you remember back when we were looking at the research, we ran the FAQ. It was saying that people like to come to interactive sessions now, and they like to do a lot more networking. My brief didn't include anything about interactive sessions. And here, in particular, what I really like about this is that it's not just because my NotebookLM instance is based on research and statistics, and it's not just people's viewpoints and opinions. It's actually pulling back the percentages into this document to tell me why I should do something in a certain way based on the research that we've received. So that was the first use case that I wanted to show you. So like enriching your briefs, some of your experiences, like using research that you have access to readily in maybe some of the workflows that you would produce. You could do the same for internal processes as well. If you're running internal processes and there's regular documents that you create internally, you could create a validation NotebookLM instance and then run the same kind of process on that too. Any questions before I move on to the next one, which is going to be more around using NotebookLM and gems for like an analytical agent? Okay, I'll shift on to the next one. So we're not going to be building this one together, just to be clear. I'm just going to be stepping over it. What I did with this one, and in this one, we're going to be using gems, by the way. So I realized I didn't use gems in the last one. I didn't have a good use case for using gems in the last one. I do have a good use case for using gems in this one. My NotebookLM instance is very, very simple. It simply has our clients at Algo. By the way, this is all made up and generated. It has our weekly channel performance and it has our campaign activity. 3 different documents that regularly we actually need to report on together. So which clients are performing the best, which clients are engaging with our content, who are our best possible clients, and who are maybe some of the ones that we need to do some extra work with. This is a really, really simple notebook, obviously, because it doesn't have more than 5 sources. I can't label and categorize these. So you saw that earlier. For this workflow, I have used a couple of gems, and I'll talk about why I've used those gems. So if we quickly step over this workflow, and then I'll go into more detail. The workflow runs on a schedule. I have a weekly email that I need to send to the team every Friday, or actually every Monday at 8 a.m. This is the first thing they see when they open up their email client. What I do is I query my NotebookLM instance, so that one with the research. And in here, this is my prompt that I worked with Claude on. You could work with Gemini on your prompt on making the grabbing the right kind of research from my NotebookLM instance. And one of the nice things about this, obviously, NotebookLM collating this data together, is not only does NotebookLM now have all 3 sources of my data, and I'm not having to upload all 3 of these sources to Gemini every time I want to create some metrics or statistics. This is basically forming my knowledge base for this kind of activity that I want to do. Because these are Google Sheets files loaded in through the Drive connector, so by going to Drive, they all automatically update now as well. So anytime there's new information, it will automatically update, and then the information that I pull using this step will be relevant and recent. So I'm pulling information, asking it to extract the relevant information for me, and I've specified what I want to see, obviously, in this this prompt. I won't step over in this in any detail. I'm then using a gem, and I've got 2 different gems here for 2 different use cases. My first gem is a data storyteller, and we'll have a look at that gem in a moment. My second gem is a short form metrics gem. So it's just giving me this impact statement at the top of the output that I want to produce. 2 different gems leveraging the NotebookLM data that I've extracted. Then I'm going to send myself an email, or I'll draft an email that goes to my team. I could obviously add more people in here at the end of the week. And we'll step over this and we'll see what this looks like and why I've built it the way I have in just a moment. The gems, as I mentioned, I have 2 gems. My reason for using gems is, if you remember back to this image, gems are really, really good as like standardizers, gatekeepers, voice, like maintaining brand voice kind of agents, as well as analysts. So the nice thing about a gem is you tell it what to do once and it will do it for you every time you use it. So my data storytelling agent, I shouldn't call it an agent, gem. If I go to that and I hit edit, my data storytelling agent has been told what it needs to do each time. And I've already said what I want my data storytelling agent to focus on. So my data storytelling agent is going to focus importantly on the figures that we care about. So our week-on-week trends, our pacing, our ROAS, our CPL, and how it should speak about them. So how do I want this to be represented in the way that I talk to the business, for example? So these are like instructions at any time this runs, it's going to produce for me in the same kind of output the information that I've presented to it. So if we go back to my workflow quickly, this notebook, as I've mentioned, will update whenever my Google Sheets updates. So every time this runs on a Monday, if there's new data, it's going to load that new data into this gem, and this gem is going to give me the output in the same format every time, just leveraging the new data this time. One of the other nice things that we can do with gems is that we can provide it knowledge, and it uses this knowledge in its output as well. So what I've done is I've provided if you've been in and around marketing analytics at all, you'll know that different businesses mention their sales pipelines, and sometimes they might have MQL, SQL, sometimes they might have SOL or SAL, like lots and lots of different acronyms that get used. And inside Google, for example, there are many other ones that I hadn't heard about before working with Google. In here, I've basically just given it a knowledge base of all the things that we care about, but also what our acronyms are and what they mean for us. And again, all this is generated for this example, but you could do the same thing. And what that means is this gem, not only, just close that tab, not only is this gem, when it runs, going to give me an output in the same format again, it's also going to output in the way that I like to talk to the business, with our acronyms, with our terms, with the things that we prioritize at the top. So that would be why I would use a gem in this instance, rather than just asking Gemini. Not only does it, if I go quickly, ask Gemini as a new step, not only does it mean I don't have to write my big prompt again and again and again, because I've got my standardized gem, that gem also has access to the knowledge that I provided to it. Now, one caveat, you may think, and I thought this yesterday, until I started putting this together, I really wanted to have, let me show you, inside the knowledge section, one of the options that you have now is access to NotebookLM. So we could have cut out an entire step in our workflow, the NotebookLM step, to go and look at the data that we have in NotebookLM. But if you choose any sources that aren't Google Drive files in your gems, you cannot add them to Workspace Studio flows. So that is why in my Workspace Studio flow, I still have an Ask NotebookLM step. Otherwise, I would just have a gem that's grab the latest data, output the latest data for me in the way that I so wish. May change in the future, but for now, that's one of the limitations that we have. My other gem, so this one now, so just to be clear, this one gives me a story about the data that's being presented this week, and it does that alongside our data interpretation reference. And also I have our short form metrics gem. This one will summarize the information and provide me a really visual output of what our metrics look like. So using emojis to represent amber, red, green, and what generally the banding looks like for those for our business too. And that also has access to our data interpretation and reference guide. Inside the workflow, I'm just going to hit test run and run. You'll get to see what this looks like in real terms. So my NotebookLM prompt is now running, and it's doing our weekly analysis based on the data that currently sits inside NotebookLM. Obviously, I could run this myself from the NotebookLM instance, but there's not going to benefit from the formatting that I have in the gems and the additional knowledge that I have in that gem. And also then I'll be manually extracting this information myself and putting it into an email. I want to try and avoid that where possible. So wait for my NotebookLM to pull the data for me. If you do have any questions, by the way, feel free to put any in the chat. We will have time at the end for any questions if you have any. Hopefully it won't take much longer. Here we go. Let's pull back my data and the information. It now sends this information. Oh my God. I have to run that test again. Sorry, I clicked. I sends that information over to the gem. Oh no, it's still running. Good. Sends that information over to the gem, which then writes the story on it, leveraging Gemini, which then sends it over to our short form gem, which writes the impact visual before then adding it to an email that goes into my email drafts. So here's our story. And then every time I run this, it will come back to me with the headline, 3 sentences, a spotlight, and what we're doing next. And then this next stage should be a bit more visual. There we go. There's our weekly snapshot, and it's created an email for me. So it's automatically sent that into my drafts. And here it is, ready to send over to the team if I so wish. So what I want to show you today really was how you can use NotebookLM as these like knowledge sources, these repositories for your knowledge that's all related, how you can query that information in a Workspace studio, and how you can use gems to provide that like additional layer of formatting and standardization to that information so that each time it comes out of NotebookLM, it's not different every time. I will share these workflows. So if you're interested in seeing how I've done this, I haven't done any magic or wizardry. I purely asked Gemini, or in my case, Claude, around the prompts that it would recommend that I use for this particular, the data that I have. Yeah, no wizardry at all. And it's come back, and I don't know, I think it looks really quite nice. Took minutes to build a workflow like this. You'll be surprised around. You might think that this looks either, some people think this looks basic and they think, what's the value in that? I'll just pull the data myself and I'll pull it into an email myself. I won't try and automate it. Fair enough. However, what we've seen from people that are doing this kind of stuff, so what we've seen from individuals in Algo that are like automating some of these processes, when they get on their weekly calls with the stakeholders that they engage with, they love seeing this stuff. They love seeing someone be proactive and like creating, even if it's like this micro optimization, like once a week you do this kind of activity. Maybe it took you an hour to build now, but in the future it's going to save you multiple hours. And not only that, it's probably going to be more standardized and hopefully more reliable and repeatable. You'll be surprised actually how much kudos you get for building a little workflow like this one. So if you can spare some time just to like have a play with these tools, it does make a major difference in like the opportunities that may become available to you. If you do also make something that your team could use, not only could you probably set it up for your team, linking to a shared folder like I did earlier, but you can also send this to them. And then that's what I'll do with you guys. They can then use this workflow, clone this workflow into their Workspace Studio flow and start using it for themselves, which obviously has a much more significant impact if other people are able to use your workflows too. I think that's everything I wanted to show you today. So if anyone's got any questions, I will hang on the line for a little while. If not, thanks for coming. I want to say I really, really appreciate it. I have changed the format of this slightly. So previously it was probably more research focused. Now it's a bit more hands-on. I'd love to hear your feedback as well on if you feel like this is more useful for you, if there's still anything missing or lacking that you think this kind of workflow needs. I'd be quite happy to run a hands-on training session as well, where we go a bit slower and maybe we build one of these together if this was too hard to follow. Any feedback, as always, well received. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Luke.
Cheers, Christina. Team.
Better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you, Luke.
Cheers, guys.